Violent collision kills 2 people outside Tampa International Airport.
An alleged road rage attack rips 3 families apart. Tonight, we're learning about the boys who were killed.
Prosecutors are going to pursue charges against people who are texting while driving.
That's right. This DUI and murder suspect could get life in prison if convicted.
You don't think it can happen to you. It can happen to you within seconds, a blink of an eye. When you take your eyes off the road for just seconds, when you're driving your car, oh, yes, it can happen to you. See, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When the sands of time will run out within your hourglass. He was a victim of a distracted driver hitting the road while riding his motorcycle going 65 miles per hour. He nearly lost his life. Now on a crusade to help save lives and prevent someone else from becoming a victim, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com and now the host of this podcast, it's Howard Drescher.
All right, welcome. Welcome to another show of DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I am your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. You can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course on Facebook, it's DistractedDB. And you can get this show, along with every other show that I have done, on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and Amazon, and TuneIn. Just use the keyword DistractedDB. And in this story here, in this show, I should say, we have a lot of distractions and things that are totally preventable. And we've talked about this in the past where we have shows that were dedicated to certain features. And what is the theme for this year's podcast shows? Stop. Stop. That is the theme for this year's podcast shows. Dedicated to the word called stop. But the more I say that, I don't think actually people are even listening. And quite honestly, to tell you the truth, I find it to be really upsetting in a way that is different this year. There is, and people know not to be distracted driving, DUI driving, drunk driving, just doing things that they shouldn't. And the more you talk about it, the more and more that you hear about it on the news, it seems to be every day there's 2 or 3 people that are something happening. And pretty much every time I do one of these shows, along the way, what ends up happening, I go back down and watch the news. And, I like to check out the news before I go to sleep and stuff. There's another deadly crash here. There's another road rage incident. There's another something that's going on. And where does this really all stem from? I'm going to reach out to probably, somebody that can kind of explain it to me, whether it's the California Highway Patrol, LAPD, maybe a psychiatrist, maybe somebody or somebody will have an answer. What is going on with today's society? And what about this? My thought is maybe, just maybe, we don't have driver education in school. People get their license. They have no awareness of what kind of dangers there are. Maybe, I'll talk to one of the owners of a driving school. Maybe I'll find that out one way or the other. But there has to be something that is different. And quite honestly, it is different in a unique that people are flipping gears, if you will. They're getting more aggressive when they drive. And evidence today in this show, we'll talk all about that. It seems like you can't take a trip anymore. And without being stuck in traffic because of somebody, not doing the right thing, ends up getting in a crash. You're stuck in the traffic. You think about like all the people that are on the flights nowadays. They have to get to the airport on time? How many people have missed their flights because of somebody, getting involved in a crash and you're stuck in traffic and you can't get around it? What about just taking a normal trip? Just, you want to go, say, from, the beach to the mountains back to the beach, wherever you're going to. Yet, it just doesn't seem to matter to other people where you're going. They think they got to get where they're going faster. I've been driving down on the road on the 15 here from Temecula, obviously, to Anaheim. I drive that route every day, and I drive 70, and that's the speed limit on the freeway. I drive 70. I'm driving, and people are passing me like I'm standing still. They're probably doing at least 80, 90, maybe 100. And I'm not exaggerating. There are people just zipping by, and when they pass you, they cut in, and it's almost bumper to bumper. I feel like I'm in the Indianapolis 500 or the Daytona race that they just recently had this past weekend. Makes you think. Just one slip, one error can cause a chain reaction like you haven't seen before. And that is, well, quite honestly, to tell you the truth, that is my major, major concern, and it really disturbs me. Speaking of taking a trip, I got a story that is a heart-wrenching story about a woman who took a trip from Arizona to San Diego, and she was killed by a suspected DUI. All this and much more when we come back on DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show.
You're listening to the DistractedDrivers.com podcast. We'll be right back.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Papa, why can't we telegraph while riding a horse?
Son, there ain't no one to blame but Jeffro. He was riding old Betsy the Stallion, tip-tapping away at his telegraph, when blam! Ran right into the side of the saloon.
Well, if Jeffro can't do it, neither should you. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Neil Armstrong waited 6 hours and 39 minutes to step onto the surface of the moon. Jackie Robinson waited 20 months to play his first game with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And even DiCaprio had to wait 22 years to win an Oscar. You can wait until your destination. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Now, back to the DistractedDrivers.com podcast.
All right, welcome back to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. Again, I am your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. And you can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course Facebook, DistractedDB. And I think I'm going to go ahead and get some totals because more and more people are starting to follow me on Facebook. They're reaching out to me on Twitter. And of course, you can always get the shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and now TuneIn. Just type in the keyword DistractedDB. And I think, if I'm correct, I got a couple of new states that have started following me. We got a couple other states, and I'll get those to you probably in the next show. And also to a couple of different new countries. I still don't have... I don't have Alaska, and there was somebody else that I was hoping to get, and unfortunately, it escapes my mind right now. Australia. Australia, that's who I'm trying to get. Australia. I knew it was beginning with an A, but hopefully we can get some followers from down there. That would be really nice. And I'll give you the totals probably in the next show on how many followers I've gotten on Twitter and Facebook. And tell you the truth, just in general, I appreciate everyone who downloads and listens to my show. Whether you check it out for about 5 minutes or the whole entire show, I appreciate that. We're trying to do a good thing here. We're trying to definitely get the word out about distracted driving. There have been many and many of people that have lost their lives for what? No reason. Because somebody decided to be selfish and, get behind the wheel after they've been drinking. They get in their phone. They get on their phones immediately as soon as they get in their car. People have run stop signs because they're not paying attention and they get into crashes. Matter of fact, 2 days ago, I was watching the news, and sure enough, that was one of the cases. And it happens. You have to be more on a defensive situation when you drive. All right, here's a story that was very sad to me to find out about. And this story comes from at 12 News out in Arizona, and I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound. A woman who was just taking a trip from Arizona to San Diego, and I don't recall if she was going to visit her boyfriend or she was heading out that way just for a pleasurable trip. Unfortunately, it didn't happen due to the fact that she was killed by a suspected DUI driver. And quite honestly, to tell you the truth, this is a very sad story right away because I think about my trips when I take them. Can it happen to me? I'm sure it could. But you have to kind of be defensive and paying attention around you because other people are just in their own little world, their own little bubble. Again, here's a story from at 12 News out in out in Arizona, and I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound.
Good evening. Tonight's big story. A quick trip to San Diego takes a deadly turn when a suspected drunk driver hits and kills a young woman from Arizona, taking off before police arrive.
Team 12's Adriana Loya spoke to exclusively with the victim's family, who, amid their grief, are pleading for the person responsible to come forward.
It was supposed to be a fun weekend for Vanessa Urbina.
She sounded so happy.
But instead, her MLK holiday getaway to California ending in tragedy.
It's totally unfair. She was one of the nicest people ever.
The 22-year-old killed Sunday morning in San Diego. A man police allege was driving under the influence, striking her and her 24-year-old boyfriend. San Diego police say the couple was standing on a sidewalk next to their SUV when 22-year-old Nestor Hernandez drove into them. Vanessa died on impact. Her boyfriend was pinned under the suspect's truck. He was taken to a hospital where he remains tonight.
She's older than me, but she's smaller than me, so I call her my baby sister.
Eduardo Urbina lost for words. Vanessa was his only sibling.
Her soul spoke to you it was a nice, kind soul.
Use this one and I use
He says
this one,
Vanessa
okay?
was an amazing aunt to his 3-year-old daughter.
Tap it.
This video, his favorite of the pair.
That's her little mini-me. She loved her. She treated her like if that was her child.
Vanessa was a full-time student at Mesa Community College, studying to be a nurse. She hoped to soon marry her boyfriend of 6 years.
There was never a dull moment around my sister. She always had you laughing in some kind of way. And just a bright person who always made your day better.
Eduardo says the couple had gotten a flat tire and were waiting for an Uber. That's why they were standing on the sidewalk that fateful night. The suspect was arraigned Wednesday on one count of gross vehicular manslaughter that also injured another victim. As the family fundraises to bring Vanessa to her Maricopa home, they hope this tragedy will serve as a reminder for others.
It's not worth it. It's not worth to go out, drink and drive, and damage everybody else's life just for one night of fun. It's not worth it.
Adriana Loya, 12 News.
All right, and again, that came from 12 News in Arizona. It's a very sad story, and I told you it was sad. So, I mean, why is it like it seems like all the good, nice people end up that way? They end up getting killed because of somebody's negligence, somebody else's negligence. Now, look, she was about to get married to her boyfriend of 6 years. Driving down to San Diego from Arizona, getting a flat tire, standing on the side of the road, waiting for an Uber driver, and then somebody comes along and just crashes into them. Why does this stuff kind of continue to happen? One has to wonder, because quite honestly, to tell you the truth, it is getting very, very repetitious on everything that we've been saying for the last couple of years. You wreck somebody's life, it's over. Well, the next story I got deals with school bus drivers out of ABC 7 New York, and I appreciate them for allowing me to do sound. When we come back.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
Hey, there's no way you can hide it. If you drive drunk, they're gonna find you. So stop kidding yourself.
Sir, have you been drinking tonight? Sir, have you been drinking this evening? Sir, have you been drinking tonight?
They will catch you and arrest you. Drive sober or get pulled over.
All right, welcome back to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. You can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course on Facebook, DistractedDB. You can get the shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and TuneIn. Just use the keyword DistractedDB. All right, you just heard that last commercial talks about DUI driving. If you drive, they will eventually catch you. Every now and then, some jackass slips through the cracks. And when they're driving a school bus and they have children on the bus, there should be no questions asked. When you do something stupid like that and you end up crashing with kids on the bus, crashing into a house or a home, or just crashing off into the woods and the trees, into other vehicles, other buildings, there should be no questions asked. That is just, no, you're done. You're done. You are a menace to society, and you don't belong around children. And yet we still have school bus drivers that know about other school bus drivers that have been involved in crashes like this. And yet it still keeps going. Here's a story from ABC 7 New York. And I want to say that this happened in New Jersey. But because they fall in that geographical location, ABC 7 New York is going to take the lead on this story. And I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound.
Developing now in New Jersey, a school bus driver is facing several charges for allegedly driving drunk with kids on board and for crashing into a home in West Caldwell. New Jersey reporter Tony Yates talked to the homeowner. She has the latest. Tony?
Hi, Sade, and you can see behind me, they are still boarding up the house right now. That homeowner, who's a professor, says this is not the first time something like that has happened. First of all, thank goodness those children were not on the bus, and thank goodness the professor was not sitting in that room where he usually does to work on his computer.
First bedroom is also damaged. You can see it, but I was not there anyway.
Professor Siva Thangam is a mechanical engineer at Stevens Institute of Technology. He left at 5 this morning, came home to this hole in the side of his house.
I got a call around 9:15 I couldn't make it here before I just came.
What he didn't see is the school bus when it was rammed into what the professor says is a second bedroom after the driver lost control this morning.
It was so loud. I mean, just went to the house and a huge boom, and that was it.
West Caldwell police say the driver, 37-year-old Anthony Stuckey of Newark, was arrested at the scene for suspicion of driving while intoxicated. They say Stuckey had just dropped students off at West Caldwell Tech High School. He was coming down Passaic Avenue and lost control. He has 15 counts, including endangering the welfare of a child because of the kids who had been on board, careless and reckless driving, that he doesn't have a commercial driver's license, which is required to drive a school bus. A woman who didn't want to be identified says she helped get the bus driver out.
When he jumped out of the back of the bus, I went over. I was the first responder to get him to sit down, and he got a little disoriented.
In his 22 years of owning the home, Professor Thangam says this is not his first close encounter with an out-of-control driver.
2 years ago, similar thing happened, but there were a lot of bushes here, and the car stopped right there.
It was just the worst this time. There is significant structural and foundation damage. He's hoping it can be repaired so he can move back home.
This is my 22nd year in this house. These are the two incidences that have happened so far. So I didn't think it would happen again.
And it did. Now, the professor tells us that first incident that happened about 2 years ago, that driver was also suspected of being under the influence.
All right, again, that story comes from ABC7 in New York. Okay, you just heard her, the reporter, say that it happened to another bus driver a year or so prior. So, how does this happen? How does this happen where they, early in the morning, dropping off school kids, are they drinking because it's so stressful? Driving a school bus with kids? And then the guy didn't even have a driver's license, a commercial driver's license, which is required in the state of New York for them to go ahead and drive the school bus. How did he get hired to drive? Somebody needs to look into that side of the story too. This is something that just keeps happening over and over again. When is it going to stop? How about starting making real examples of some of these guys, locking them up, and maybe put them in there for 6 months, put them in there for like a year at a time. You just can't just slap them on the hand and say, hey, you shouldn't do that, and then you move on your way. That is so ridiculous. And that leads me to this next story from KTLA Channel 5 here in Los Angeles. A violent crash that killed 2 that is totally freaking preventable, and yet it still freaking happens again and again and again. And I'm tired of hearing these stories. I'm tired of talking about these stories. When are we going to learn? When are we going to wake up? When are we going to get the prosecutors and the judges to get on the same page and start locking them up? There has to be a federal, disciplinary actions with everyone. You do this, you get this automatically. No questions asked. You're found guilty of DUI. You're found guilty of this or that. This is the punishment the first time. This is the second time. The third time, boom. You don't need a third time because you probably just took somebody else's life. 2 times, everybody knows. Everybody knows. I don't want to hear about the 3-strike rule and all this stuff. Everybody knows about driving and the violent crashes that you're about to hear ripped a family apart. Here's a story from KTLA Channel 5 here in Los Angeles, and I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound.
Office when she was struck.
This wasn't a freak accident. This could have been completely avoided. Just because it's 3 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't mean drive 100 miles an hour on a damn street. There's people trying to get to work early.
Police say the driver of the Corvette also died. A passenger in the Corvette was rushed to a hospital with severe injuries.
Nobody deserves this. And I'm sorry for the family that also lost their person that was driving.
But this should have never have happened. There's rules and regulations out there for a reason.
The crash happened near Balboa and Victory Boulevards. The area was shut down for several hours as authorities investigated.
I'm so sad for him.
The owner of a nearby donut shop is saddened by the loss of life. The impact from the crash sent debris flying into several stores, including his.
Part of the car came through the window.
And I saw the engine in the front of the salon.
His brother-in-law was inside working when the crash happened. He's thankful he wasn't injured.
He got shaking. He got scared. He thought it's an earthquake. And then come out here, he said, car like flip outside. And one of the car go inside the building.
Authorities investigated for several hours this morning before reopening this intersection. Reporting live in Lake Balboa, Kimberly Chang, KTLA 5 News.
Again, I want to thank KTLA Channel 5 for allowing me to use the sound. This is heart-wrenching. Just hearing it just rips your guts out. And quite honestly, it's got to stop. I'm asking and I'm pleading right now. Can the prosecutors and the attorneys and the judges all get on one page? Those people aren't coming back. But yet, you get a slap on the hand to the perpetrator. Now, unfortunately, the perpetrator in this case passed away also in their car crash. But for the ones that don't, can we get on the freaking same page? We talk about what's right and what's wrong. You send people to jail for even lesser offenses. They killed somebody. When you're behind the wheel, that is a weapon. 3 or 4 ton weapon. And when you're traveling at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, it even makes it worse. Because that impact, I think they mentioned to me before, and somebody did, the California Highway Patrol or LAPD, mentioned the fact about when the impact at that rate, it's twice as a limit that you're traveling. Because the force of the impact is so great. It like doubles it. So let's double the punishment. Let's double what is right and put these people away, because it is so disheartening hearing these stories that family was just ripped apart. Didn't need to happen. Every one of these stories that I talked about today could have been stopped. Should have been stopped. Didn't need to happen. But it still continues to happen more and more. Why is this happening? Because we're getting laxed in our judicial system. I want to talk about, toughening it up a little bit. Because it is so insane how you can go to the store and steal like a bubble gum or steal a pack of cards or do something like that. You can go to jail for a long time, but yet you end up killing somebody when in the DUI. You get a slap on a hand and you're out the next day. When is that going to stop? That's the question that I have. And that might be the question that I end up never getting an answer to. And whether I never get another answer to it, there has to be something that specifies that, hey, this isn't right. We're looking at a society that needs to change. And it needs to change quickly. Because if not, it's almost like being in a wild, wild west. Your weapon is your gun, if you really think about it. You crash into somebody, you just get up, walk away, and just keep on going. In old wild, wild west, you probably shoot somebody and just drive away. Or walk away, or ride your horse away, whatever the case might be. But we have to stop this. Because innocent people are losing their lives each and every day. And there is no reason for it. But yet it still happens. Today is President's Day. Watch the news if you're not going to work. Watch the news. Check out the traffic reports. Are they without craziness? or the traffic reporters show you on TV, whatever freeway you're at, whatever freeway you're watching, it's backed up because of somebody getting killed on the freeway because President's Day, they're off, people are speeding, some people are going to work, other people are off, enjoying it time, going to the beaches or going to the mountains or wherever they're going, and they end up killing somebody. Remember, I don't want to die today, do you? Until the next podcast show, please be safe.